Introduction. There comes a moment in every person's life when the walls of the familiar begin to close in. You start to sense that there's more within you than what your current habits, fears, or self-talk allow you to express. You catch glimpses of a greater version of yourself, but every time you try to reach for it, invisible forces seem to pull you back. These forces are not external. They are the patterns, beliefs, and mental habits that have been wired into your subconscious over the years. They are the silent programs running beneath the surface, shaping how you think, feel, and act every single day. This audiobook was created to help you rewrite those programs. To rewire your mindset is not merely to think positive or chant affirmations that fade once life gets loud again. It is the deliberate process of renewing your inner architecture, the very neural and emotional pathways that dictate how you perceive reality. Rewiring means taking back control of the most powerful instrument you possess, your mind. It means understanding that while you cannot always choose what happens to you, you can absolutely choose how your mind interprets and responds to it. That choice is where all personal freedom begins. The mind is both a mirror and a magnet. It reflects your inner world while also drawing experiences that match your dominant thoughts and emotions. When your mindset is clouded by fear, self-doubt, and scarcity, you unconsciously attract situations that confirm those feelings. But when your inner script changes, when you train your mind to expect growth, abundance, and resilience, your outer world begins to reorganize itself in alignment with that new mental vibration. Science calls it neuroplasticity. Spirituality calls it renewal. Both speak of the same truth. The brain and spirit are malleable, designed to evolve through focused thought and consistent practice. Every lasting transformation begins within. People often search for new jobs, relationships, or environments, believing that external change will cure internal chaos. Yet, no matter where you go, you take yourself with you, your patterns, your fears, your unconscious conditioning. If your mindset remains unhealed, even the best opportunities can wither in your hands. But once your mindset is rewired, even in the same circumstances, you begin to see new possibilities that were invisible before. Perspective is everything, and your mindset is the lens through which all of life is interpreted. Rewiring your mind requires humility and patience. You will discover that much of what you believed about yourself was never truly yours. It was inherited from family, culture, trauma, or repeated experience. The mind records every emotion like wet clay, capturing fingerprints. Over time, those impressions become hard-set molds that determine how you think. But just as clay can be reshaped with warmth and intention, so can your thoughts. This audiobook will show you how to soften the old patterns and sculpt new ones rooted in awareness, gratitude, discipline, and faith. The goal is not perfection, but liberation. Rewiring your mindset frees you from the tyranny of old narratives. The ones that say you're not enough, that success belongs to others, that your past defines your future. It empowers you to live from choice rather than reaction. Imagine walking through life with an inner steadiness that no setback can shake, with a clarity that helps you discern opportunities from distractions, with a heart that can forgive quickly and a mind that can refocus instantly. That is the essence of a rewired mind, one that works for you, not against you. The chapters ahead explore 11 transformative habits that, when practiced consistently, begin to reprogram your thought patterns at a deep level. These habits are not quick fixes, but daily disciplines that build neural pathways for peace, confidence, and clarity. They are the keys that unlock a new identity, one rooted in power, faith, and purpose. The truth is simple. Your life rises or falls to the level of your mindset. Rewire the mind, and the rest follows. Chapter 1. The Power of a Rewire Mind. There is an invisible power that quietly governs the direction of your life, your mindset. It is the inner compass that determines how you interpret experiences, how you respond to challenges, and what you ultimately believe is possible for you. Long before your circumstances change, your mindset changes. Every success story begins in the mind long before it becomes visible in the world. When your inner world expands, your outer world rearranges itself to match that expansion. That is the undeniable power of a rewired mind. To understand this power, you must first understand what mindset truly means. A mindset is not simply an attitude or a collection of thoughts. It is the deep-seated pattern of thinking that filters every piece of information you receive. It is how you interpret failure, how you perceive opportunity, and how you define yourself in relation to the world around you. Mindset is not what happens to you, but how your mind chooses to see what happens. Two people can face the same event and come out with completely different realities, not because the situation was different, but because their mindsets were. Psychologist Carol Dweck's work on fixed and growth mindsets paints this truth vividly. A fixed mindset believes that intelligence, talent, and ability are static traits. You either have them or you don't. People who operate from this mindset fear failure because it feels like proof that they're inadequate. They avoid challenges that might expose their weaknesses and often give up when things get difficult. In contrast, a growth mindset sees abilities as muscles that can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. A person with a growth mindset doesn't fear failure. They see it as feedback. They welcome challenges because they understand that growth happens through struggle, not in its absence. Your mindset becomes the lens through which you perceive your entire existence. If you carry a fixed mindset, life feels heavy and limited. You interpret obstacles as stop signs. But when your mindset is rewired toward growth, the same obstacles become stepping stones. A growth-oriented mind doesn't ask, "Can I?" It asks, "How can I?" And that single shift in language changes everything. You begin to view mistakes as part of the process, criticism as an invitation to improve, and setbacks as opportunities to adapt. The world itself doesn't suddenly become easier. You simply become stronger, wiser, and more adaptable within it. But mindset is not only a psychological concept. It is a creative force that shapes the very fabric of your reality. Every thought you think carries energy. That energy influences how you feel, and your feelings, in turn, dictate your actions. Over time, repeated thoughts and emotions become your habits, and your habits define your results. If your inner dialogue constantly affirms lack, fear, or defeat, you unconsciously create experiences that validate those beliefs. On the other hand, when you train your mind to focus on growth, gratitude, and abundance, you begin to notice opportunities that were always there, but previously invisible to your old way of thinking. This process is not mystical wishful thinking. It is deeply rooted in science. The human brain has an extraordinary ability called neuroplasticity, the capacity to reorganize and form new neural connections throughout life. For decades, scientists believed the brain was fixed after a certain age, that once you reach adulthood, your mental patterns were permanently set. But modern neuroscience has completely overturned that belief. Studies now show that your brain is constantly rewiring itself in response to your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Every time you learn a new skill, challenge a limiting belief, or consciously change a habit, you are literally reshaping the architecture of your brain. Think of your mind like a dense forest. Every thought you repeat carves a pathway through that forest. If you keep thinking the same fearful or self-defeating thoughts, those trails become well-worn roads, easy for your brain to travel. But when you introduce new patterns, thoughts of confidence, purpose, or possibility, you begin to carve new pathways. At first, those new trails feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But with consistent practice, they become the brain's new default routes. Over time, the old pathways fade as the new ones strengthen. This is how rewiring happens, through intentional repetition that replaces the old with the empowering. Neuroplasticity proves that change is not reserved for the young or the gifted. It is available to anyone who decides to think differently. Age, background, or past experience cannot stop a mind that is willing to learn new. The most extraordinary transformations happen not when life gets easier, but when a person learns to think differently about life. Each day you have the power to rewrite the way your brain perceives the world, to train it to focus on gratitude instead of fear, discipline instead of distraction, and faith instead of doubt. This is where the bridge between science and spirituality becomes most beautiful. While neuroscience explains how the mind can change, spirituality explains why it must. The spiritual dimension of mindset transformation recognizes that your mind is not just a biological organ, but a divine interface between your inner and outer worlds. Every thought carries vibration. Every belief carries creative power. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, the ancient proverb declares. Long before brain scans could visualize neural rewiring, wisdom traditions already understood that thought and faith shape reality. When you align the science of neuroplasticity with the spiritual practice of mindfulness, gratitude, and intentional thought, transformation becomes inevitable. The act of rewiring is not about forcing change through sheer willpower. It's about reteaching your mind to serve your higher self. Your thoughts were never meant to be your enemies. They are meant to be tools for creation. The problem is not that your mind is broken, but that it has been programmed by fear, repetition, and survival. Rewiring simply means taking back authorship of that program. Why is rewiring your mind the foundation of success, happiness, and resilience? Because everything you experience begins with perception, and perception is filtered through your mental wiring. Success is not about luck or external conditions. It's about alignment, the alignment of your beliefs, emotions, and actions. Happiness is not the absence of problems, but the presence of inner peace regardless of circumstances. Resilience is not about never falling. It's about learning how to rise faster each time you do. None of these qualities come from the outside world. They are internal states cultivated by a renewed mind. When your mindset is wired for limitation, even blessings feel burdensome. But when it is wired for possibility, even challenges become invitations to grow. The world reflects your inner state like a mirror. What you consistently project is what you eventually experience. Rewiring your mind means deciding that you are no longer a passive receiver of life's outcomes, but an active participant in shaping them. It means recognizing that while you cannot control every event, you can control your focus. And focus is the birthplace of power. A rewired mind begins to see lessons where others see loss, opportunity where others see obstacles, and purpose where others see pain. It interprets rejection as redirection and failure as refinement. It is not naive optimism, but conscious mastery. It is a disciplined decision to direct your mental energy toward growth rather than stagnation. This first chapter is your awakening. It invites you to question the old patterns that no longer serve you and to recognize that your mind is not fixed. It is fluid, alive, and waiting for your command. The journey ahead is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you have always been beneath the noise of fear and conditioning. You are not defined by your past wiring. You are defined by your willingness to rewire. The power of a rewired mind is not found in grand moments of revelation, but in the quiet, consistent acts of awareness that reshape you over time. Each thought you choose consciously becomes a brick in the architecture of a new reality. And as you continue through the pages of this book, you will begin to see that the greatest transformations do not happen outside of you. They happen within you, one thought at a time, one choice at a time, until your entire life begins to mirror the masterpiece of a mind set free. Chapter 2, Habit 1, Awareness, the beginning of transformation. Every transformation begins with a single, sacred moment, the moment of awareness. Before you can heal, grow, or evolve, you must first see. Awareness is the light that reveals what has been hidden in the shadows of your mind for years. It is the first act of awakening, the gentle unmasking of the patterns that have been driving your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors without your permission. You cannot change what you are not aware of, and that truth is as humbling as it is liberating. Most people live much of their lives on autopilot. They wake up each morning, follow the same routines, think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and repeat the same reactions day after day. Their lives are not consciously lived, but unconsciously repeated. This is not because they lack intelligence or willpower. It's because the human mind is designed to automate. The brain conserves energy by turning repeated behaviors and thought patterns into habits. Over time, these patterns become so ingrained that they no longer feel like choices. They feel like personality. You start to say, "That's just how I am," without realizing that what you're really describing is how you've been programmed. Becoming aware means interrupting that autopilot. It is stepping out of the stream of unconscious living and realizing that you are not your thoughts, you are the thinker of your thoughts. It is understanding that emotions, no matter how strong, are temporary visitors, not permanent residents. Awareness allows you to witness the mind rather than be swallowed by it. Without awareness, you react. With awareness, you respond. And that single distinction between reaction and response is the birthplace of transformation. To cultivate awareness, you must learn to recognize your automatic thoughts and emotional triggers. Automatic thoughts are the rapid mental responses that arise without conscious effort. The reflexive judgments, fears, and narratives that play in the background of your daily life. They're the voice that says, "I'll never be good enough," "they don't like me," or "nothing ever works out for me." These thoughts appear so quickly that you rarely question them. Yet they influence every decision, color every emotion, and shape every outcome. Awareness begins when you start noticing these patterns as they arise, not to fight them, but to observe them. Emotional triggers are equally powerful. They are moments when something outside of you touches something unresolved within you. A tone of voice that reminds you of past criticism, a delay that stirs feelings of unworthiness, or a disagreement that awakens the old need to prove yourself. Triggers are not signs of weakness. They are messengers pointing to the wounds still asking for your attention. When you become aware of your triggers, you stop being controlled by them. You begin to see that your emotions are not random storms, but reflections of the beliefs you hold about yourself and the world. One of the most powerful practices for cultivating this awareness is what I call the observer's mind. It is the art of witnessing your inner experience without judgment, as though you are watching the thoughts and emotions of another person. Imagine sitting quietly beside a flowing river. Each thought and feeling that arises is like a leaf floating downstream. You don't have to grab it, chase it, or push it away. You simply notice it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. This practice transforms your relationship with your mind. Instead of drowning in the current of emotion, you learn to rest on the riverbank of awareness. The observer's mind reveals a profound truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. When you grasp this truth deeply, life changes. Anger still arises, but you don't become anger. Fear may visit, but you no longer identify as fearful. Sadness may flow through you, but you know it is not who you are. Awareness creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies your freedom. To strengthen this awareness, journaling and mindfulness become invaluable tools. Journaling allows you to translate the intangible, thoughts, emotions, insights, into tangible words on paper. Writing slows down the speed of your thoughts, giving you time to observe them with clarity. When you record your feelings, you begin to notice patterns. Perhaps you'll see that certain emotions repeat in the same situations, or that specific beliefs surface every time you face a challenge. Journaling is not about producing perfect sentences. It's about revealing the subconscious. It is a mirror for the mind. The more consistently you write, the more fluent you become in the language of your inner world. Mindfulness, on the other hand, is awareness in motion. It is the practice of being fully present in each moment, while eating, walking, working, or simply breathing. It invites you to notice the texture of life as it unfolds. When you eat mindfully, you taste every flavor. When you walk mindfully, you feel the earth beneath your feet. When you breathe mindfully, you realize that life is happening right now, not in the past you regret or the future you fear. Mindfulness anchors you to the present, where transformation is always possible. The past is a memory. The future is imagination. Only awareness exists now. However, as you become more aware, you may also become more self-critical. When you start noticing how reactive, fearful, or negative some of your thoughts can be, it's easy to fall into judgment, to think, "What's wrong with me?" But awareness is not about condemnation. It's about compassion. You cannot hate yourself into healing. True awareness requires gentleness. You must learn to observe yourself as a loving parent would observe a child, with patience, understanding, and curiosity. Every self-destructive pattern began as a form of self-protection. The mind learned those patterns to keep you safe in moments when you didn't know better. Awareness is your chance to thank those old strategies for their service and release them with love. Turning self-judgment into self-understanding is a profound act of maturity. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" begin asking, "What is this pattern trying to show me?" When you replace blame with curiosity, your inner world begins to soften. The mind stops being a battlefield and becomes a classroom. You start to see that every emotion carries wisdom, every reaction carries history, and every wound carries an invitation to grow. The more you understand yourself, the less you fear yourself, and the less you fear yourself, the freer you become. Awareness is not a destination you reach once and for all. It is a daily practice. It grows through repetition, through the simple act of remembering to observe. At first, you may only catch yourself after the fact, after the argument, after the emotional spiral, after the self-doubt. But with time, awareness moves closer to the moment. Eventually, you catch the thought before it takes over, the emotion before it erupts, the pattern before it repeats. This is what mastery feels like. Not perfection, but presence. The beauty of awareness is that it doesn't demand that you fix everything at once. It only asks that you notice. The noticing itself begins to dissolve the power of the unconscious. Light doesn't fight darkness. It simply reveals it. And in doing so, the darkness loses its hold. The same is true for awareness. Each time you witness your inner experience without judgment, you reclaim a piece of your power. This first habit, awareness, is the foundation of all transformation. Without it, every other effort becomes mechanical, disconnected from the root. Awareness is what allows you to see the map of your own mind, to understand where you are and where you've been, so you can consciously choose where to go next. It is the quiet revolution that begins not in the outer world, but in the stillness of your own consciousness. When you learn to live in awareness, life stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something that unfolds through you. You begin to notice beauty where there was once only noise, meaning where there was once only motion, and peace where there was once only reaction. This is the beginning of transformation, the awakening of a mind that finally remembers it has always been free. Chapter 3. Habit 2. Thought Detox. Your mind is a garden. Every thought you entertain is a seed. Some thoughts bloom into beautiful flowers, ideas that inspire, strengthen, and uplift you. Others grow like weeds, doubts, fears, and insecurities that choke the life out of your confidence and peace. The truth is, you cannot plant weeds and expect roses to grow. If you want clarity, creativity, and calm, you must first cleanse your inner garden. You must pull out the weeds of toxic thinking and nurture thoughts that serve your growth. This process is what we call a thought detox, the intentional act of cleaning your mental space to create room for truth, light, and possibility. Most people underestimate how deeply their thoughts shape their reality. Your thoughts are not mere ideas floating through your head. They are blueprints for your life. Every emotion, decision, and behavior is born from a thought. What you repeatedly think becomes what you eventually believe, and what you believe determines what you allow yourself to experience. When your mind is cluttered with limiting beliefs and destructive self-talk, it is like trying to run a marathon with weights strapped to your feet. You might keep moving, but every step feels heavier than it should. A limiting belief is any thought that convinces you that you are less than you truly are, or that your potential has boundaries. These beliefs are subtle yet powerful. They whisper things like, "I'm not good enough," "I'm not smart enough," or "people like me never succeed." You may not even realize you're thinking them because they become background noise, woven into your inner dialogue. They often come from childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, or past disappointments. For example, one harsh teacher's words, one rejection, or one failed attempt can plant a seed of unworthiness that continues to grow long after the moment has passed. The first step in a thought detox is awareness, catching those inner lies as they arise. Begin by paying attention to how you speak to yourself throughout the day. Notice the tone of your internal voice. Is it kind or critical, encouraging or dismissive? When you make a mistake, do you say, "It's okay, I'll learn," or do you instantly declare, "I always mess up"? Your self-talk reveals the state of your inner world more than any external circumstance ever could. The goal of detoxing your thoughts is not to suppress negativity, but to expose and transform it. Once you become aware of those self-limiting thoughts, you can begin replacing them with new, empowering affirmations. Affirmations are not empty slogans. They are intentional declarations that reprogram the subconscious mind. The brain doesn't differentiate between imagination and reality. It responds to repetition and emotion. When you affirm something consistently with belief and feeling, your brain starts to build new neural connections that support that truth. Saying, "I am capable," may feel strange at first, especially if you've spent years believing the opposite. But with repetition, that phrase begins to sink into your subconscious, gradually becoming your new default belief. Affirmations are most powerful when they are spoken with conviction and paired with visualization. When you say, "I am worthy of success," imagine what it feels like to live that truth, how you stand, how you speak, how you move through the world. The goal is not to convince your mind of a lie, but to remind it of a deeper truth it has forgotten. You were born capable, creative, and worthy. The negative thoughts are simply layers of dust that have gathered over time, obscuring your brilliance. A thought detox is the act of gently wiping that dust away. Reframing your inner dialogue is the art of turning obstacles into opportunities. Life will always present challenges, but the meaning you assign to those challenges determines how they affect you. Reframing is not about denying pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about shifting perspective. For instance, instead of saying, "I failed," you might say, "I learned what doesn't work." Instead of, "I'm so behind," you can reframe it as, "I'm moving at the pace that's right for my journey." This subtle change in language transforms discouragement into empowerment. When you change your words, you change your focus. When you change your focus, you change your experience. Your inner dialogue is the longest conversation you'll ever have. It plays quietly in your mind from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. For many, that voice is a relentless critic, echoing fears, comparisons, and regrets. But that voice can become your greatest ally if you retrain it to speak life instead of limitation. Every time you catch yourself thinking, "I can't," pause and ask, "Who told me that?" Often, you'll discover that the voice of self-doubt doesn't even belong to you. It belongs to old experiences, people, or fears that have long lost their relevance. Reframing allows you to reclaim ownership of your inner voice and redirect it toward truth. Detoxing your mind is not a one-time event. It is a daily discipline, much like keeping a room clean. Just as dust naturally settles on untouched surfaces, negative thoughts creep in whenever awareness fades. That's why daily mental decluttering is essential. You can begin each morning by checking in with your mind, asking, "What am I thinking? What am I believing today?" A few minutes of reflection can reveal whether you are starting your day with peace or with resistance. One powerful practice for mental clarity is the morning mind cleanse. Before checking your phone or diving into tasks, sit quietly and observe your thoughts. Write down whatever comes up without filtering: worries, plans, fears, hopes. Then, take a moment to separate what you can control from what you can't. This simple act of awareness prevents mental chaos from dictating your day. You might also end your day with a mental release exercise, where you reflect on the day's events and consciously let go of what no longer serves you. Thoughts left unresolved before sleep often recycle as anxiety in the morning. Releasing them before bed resets the mind for rest and renewal. Another daily detox practice is mindful breathing. The breath is a bridge between mind and body. When your thoughts are racing, slow, deliberate breathing brings you back to the present moment. With each inhale, imagine drawing in calm and clarity. With each exhale, imagine releasing stress and negativity. This practice may seem simple, but it trains your brain to associate awareness with peace, gradually reducing the power of intrusive thoughts. As you continue to declutter your mind, you'll notice that peace is not something you find. It's something you uncover. Beneath the noise of self-criticism and worry lies a natural state of calm awareness. When you remove the debris of limiting beliefs, your authentic self, creative, confident and clear, begins to emerge effortlessly. A detoxed mind becomes spacious. It stops reacting to every external event and begins responding from inner wisdom. The power of thought detox lies in consistency. It is the slow, steady reprogramming of your inner language until it aligns with your highest truth. Over time, you will notice that situations that once triggered fear now evoke curiosity, and challenges that once overwhelmed you now feel manageable. You will begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles, and solutions where others see problems. That is the gift of a clear mind. It becomes a vessel for insight and creativity. A thought detox is not about never thinking negatively again. It's about mastering the art of returning to balance faster each time you drift. It's learning to catch a spiral of worry before it consumes you, to challenge a self-limiting thought before it becomes your reality, and to choose perspective over panic. Every time you shift from fear to faith, from doubt to possibility, you are detoxing the mind and reinforcing a new pattern of thought. When your mental space is clean, clarity returns. You begin to think more deeply, love more freely, and act more intentionally. You stop reacting to life and start co-creating with it. Your energy becomes lighter, your vision sharper, and your confidence stronger. The chaos of the outer world no longer dictates the peace of your inner world because you've learned to maintain the purity of your thoughts. Detoxing your mind is not just about mental hygiene. It is about spiritual alignment. A cluttered mind cannot hear the whispers of intuition. When you cleanse your thoughts, you create room for inspiration, creativity, and divine guidance to flow through. The mind becomes a clear channel for the truth that was always waiting beneath the noise. Your thoughts are the architects of your destiny. To build a life of purpose, peace, and power, you must first cleanse the blueprint. Every new thought you choose consciously is a stroke of design on the masterpiece of your life. And as you continue to detox your mind, you'll find that the world around you begins to mirror your inner clarity, peaceful, purposeful, and beautifully aligned. Chapter 4. Habit 3. Gratitude Reset. There is a quiet power that can transform your life faster than ambition, willpower, or even discipline. The power of gratitude. Gratitude is not just a polite gesture or a fleeting emotion you feel when something good happens. It is a state of consciousness, a way of seeing life through the lens of abundance rather than lack. Gratitude is the art of turning what you have into enough, and in doing so, you unlock a peace that cannot be purchased, a joy that cannot be shaken, and a sense of fulfillment that doesn't depend on circumstance. The human mind, left unchecked, tends to focus on what is missing. It scans the world for gaps, threats, and unfulfilled desires, a survival instinct inherited from our ancestors who needed to detect danger to stay alive. But in modern life, this same tendency can become toxic. When your focus is constantly on what you don't have, what you haven't achieved, or what's still wrong, your brain begins to operate in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction. You start to live in a cycle of, I'll be happy when I get the job, when I find love, when I make more money. The tragedy is that this mindset postpones happiness to a future that never arrives because the moment one desire is fulfilled, the mind immediately moves to the next. Gratitude interrupts this cycle. It teaches the mind to find joy in the present moment, to anchor happiness in what is, not just what could be. Modern neuroscience has revealed that gratitude is far more than a moral virtue. It's a powerful neurochemical tool that reshapes the brain's architecture. When you practice gratitude, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, the same neurotransmitters responsible for pleasure and happiness. These chemicals elevate your mood almost instantly, creating a sense of warmth and contentment. Over time, repeated gratitude practice strengthens neural pathways associated with positivity and well-being. In essence, the more you focus on what's good, the easier it becomes for your brain to find more good things. Gratitude literally trains your mind to see abundance where it once only saw lack. Research from neuroscientists at the University of California, Berkeley, has shown that consistent gratitude practice can rewire the brain's reward system. Normally, the brain's reward center, the region responsible for motivation and pleasure, is activated by external stimuli like achievements, recognition, or material gain. However, gratitude redirects this system inward. Instead of depending on outside circumstances for happiness, your brain learns to derive satisfaction from internal reflection. This is why people who practice gratitude daily report higher levels of contentment, lower anxiety, and greater resilience, even in difficult times. The mind, when trained through gratitude, stops being a restless seeker and becomes a peaceful receiver. Gratitude also counteracts one of the brain's most destructive habits, adaptation. Humans adapt quickly to change, whether good or bad. That's why the excitement of buying a new car, moving to a better home, or achieving a goal fades faster than expected. This phenomenon, known as hedonic adaptation, ensures that even the most positive experiences eventually feel normal. But gratitude disrupts this pattern. By deliberately acknowledging and appreciating the good things in your life, you slow down adaptation and sustain joy for longer. You remind the brain not to take blessings for granted, but to savor them as though they were new. To experience the full power of gratitude, it must become more than a passing feeling. It must become a ritual. One of the simplest yet most effective practices is gratitude journaling. Each day, take a few moments to write down what you're grateful for. It could be something profound, like your health, family, or faith, or something as ordinary as a warm cup of tea, the laughter of a friend, or the softness of your bed. The key is not the size of the blessing, but the depth of your awareness. When you record these moments, you train your mind to notice beauty in the ordinary. What once seemed mundane becomes sacred when seen through the eyes of gratitude. In the beginning, this practice may feel mechanical, especially if your mind is accustomed to focusing on problems. But with time, it becomes effortless. As your brain begins associating gratitude with emotional reward, it starts seeking more reasons to feel thankful. You begin to notice things you previously overlooked. The way sunlight filters through your window, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the simple fact that you have another day to live. Life itself starts to feel richer, not because circumstances have changed, but because perception has. Another powerful practice is gratitude visualization. Close your eyes and imagine yourself surrounded by the people, opportunities, and experiences that fill your life right now. Picture each one as a glowing light in your mind's eye. As you focus on each light, silently say, "Thank you." Feel the emotion behind those words as deeply as you can. Gratitude visualization works because the brain does not distinguish vividly imagined experiences from real ones. By immersing yourself in the feeling of gratitude, you activate the same neural circuits that produce joy and fulfillment. This emotional rehearsal conditions your mind to operate from a baseline of abundance. Over time, gratitude transforms your emotional landscape. Instead of waking up each morning thinking of what you lack, you start the day aware of how blessed you already are. The anxious striving for more begins to dissolve because your mind no longer equates happiness with accumulation. You move from "I need more" to "I already have enough." This shift doesn't make you complacent. It makes you powerful. When you operate from sufficiency, your decisions become clearer, your creativity expands, and your confidence deepens. You no longer chase opportunities out of fear or desperation. You attract them from a place of wholeness. Gratitude also softens the heart. It is impossible to be truly grateful and resentful at the same time. The vibration of gratitude neutralizes the energy of envy, comparison, and self-pity. When you focus on what you have, the mind stops obsessing over what others possess. Gratitude opens space for compassion, empathy, and generosity because it reminds you that you already have more than enough to give. It changes your relationships, too. The moment you begin appreciating people instead of expecting perfection from them, love begins to flow more freely. Spiritually, gratitude aligns you with the rhythm of abundance that governs the universe. Everything in creation expands when appreciated. What you think multiplies. Gratitude sends a signal of faith, a declaration that you trust life to provide. When you say, "Thank you," even before a desire is fulfilled, you are affirming your belief in divine timing. You're saying, "I know blessings are already on their way." This attitude of gratitude turns waiting into worship and uncertainty into peace. But maintaining gratitude is not always easy. There will be days when life feels heavy, when disappointment dulls your vision and gratitude feels forced. Those are the days when the practice matters most. Gratitude is not about denying pain or pretending that everything is perfect. It's about finding light even in the darkness. When you can say, I may not have everything I want, but I'm thankful for what I have. You reclaim your power from circumstance. You remind your soul that joy is an inside job. To keep your mind anchored in gratitude, create small rituals that integrate it into your day. Whisper a quiet, thank you when you wake up, acknowledging the gift of another sunrise. Pause before each meal to appreciate the food before you. Reflect before bed on 3 things that went right during the day, no matter how small. Gratitude practice consistently becomes second nature. It stops being something you do and becomes who you are. A gratitude reset is more than a mental exercise. It is a reprogramming of perception. It shifts the foundation of your life from scarcity to sufficiency, from striving to serenity. You begin to see that abundance was never about accumulation. It was about awareness. The more grateful you become, the more life gives you to be grateful for. Not because the universe changes, but because you finally start noticing how blessed you've always been. At its deepest level, gratitude is the bridge between the mind and the spirit. It grounds you in the present while opening you to the divine. It transforms ordinary moments into miracles and routine days into sacred experiences. Gratitude doesn't just change what you see, it changes how you see. It dissolves the illusion of lack and reveals that, in truth, nothing is missing. You already have enough. You always did. And once your mind learns to rest in that truth, you discover a kind of happiness that no circumstance can steal, a happiness born from a grateful heart and a rewired mind. Chapter 5. Habit 4. Discipline over motivation. There is a moment in every person's journey when enthusiasm begins to fade. The excitement that once pushed you forward slowly turns into resistance. The goals that once inspired you start to feel heavy, and the voice in your head whispers, "Not today." That is the moment that separates dreamers from doers, when the fire of motivation burns low, and the strength of discipline must take over. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. Motivation is an emotion. Discipline is a decision. If you want to build a life of mastery, you must learn to rely not on moods, but on mental muscles that act regardless of how you feel. Motivation is fickle. It rises and falls with circumstances, energy levels, and external stimuli. It depends on inspiration, the right quote, the right song, the right environment. It feels powerful in bursts, but disappears the moment comfort or distraction calls your name. It's like a spark that ignites excitement, but burns out quickly if not fed by something deeper. Discipline, on the other hand, is quiet, steady, and enduring. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't wait for the perfect conditions, it creates them. Discipline is the commitment to action even when the emotion has gone missing. It is what remains when motivation runs dry. People often mistake motivation for the key to success because they only see the highlight reels of others, the triumphs, the breakthroughs, the passion. What they don't see are the mornings when the person didn't feel like showing up, the nights when exhaustion whispered, "Rest," but purpose whispered louder, "Keep going." Discipline is what bridges that gap. It is what transforms fleeting inspiration into lasting transformation. Motivation inspires you to start a workout. Discipline gets you out of bed at 5 a.m. Motivation makes you buy a book. Discipline makes you finish it. Motivation makes you dream. Discipline turns the dream into a plan and the plan into a result. The psychology behind this is simple yet profound. Motivation originates from the limbic system, the emotional part of your brain that craves reward and pleasure. Discipline, however, comes from the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic, decision-making, and long-term vision. When you operate on motivation alone, you're driven by how you feel in the moment. But when you build discipline, you're guided by who you intend to become. Discipline shifts you from emotional reaction to intentional creation. It transforms "I want" into "I will," and I should into I must. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate discipline is to create routines that automate success. The brain loves structure. When you design consistent routines, you reduce decision fatigue, the mental exhaustion that comes from making too many choices throughout the day. Each time you decide whether to work out, study, or write, you spend mental energy that could be used more productively. But when your routine is fixed, those actions become automatic, requiring less willpower and emotional negotiation. The goal is to make success habitual. When your environment and schedule support your goals, discipline becomes easier because you no longer have to think about whether or not to act. You simply act. For instance, if you want to read daily, schedule it at the same time each evening. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. By removing friction, you signal to your brain that this action is not optional. It's part of who you are. The power of routine lies in its predictability. It builds consistency not by force, but by familiarity. Over time, these repeated actions sculpt identity. You stop saying, "I'm trying to be disciplined," and start saying, "I'm a disciplined person." Identity always follows behavior, not the other way around. Another technique that reinforces discipline is what psychologists call microcommitments, the art of starting small, but consistently. The biggest reason people fail to stay consistent is that they set goals that are too large, too soon. They want to transform their lives overnight. But discipline is not built in grand gestures. It is built in daily repetitions. Microcommitments are the small, manageable promises you make to yourself and actually keep. It could be writing for 5 minutes a day, meditating for 2 minutes, or walking 1 block instead of running 5 miles. The magic is not in the size of the action, but in the integrity of following through. Each small act reinforces self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of discipline. When you keep the promises you make to yourself, no matter how small, you teach your mind that your word can be trusted. You stop negotiating with excuses because your brain begins associating action with identity. Every time you follow through, you strengthen the neural circuits that make it easier to act the next time. The more consistent you become, the less resistance you feel. What was once effort becomes instinct. Closely related to microcommitments is the concept of habit stacking. This is the strategy of linking a new habit to an existing one so that your daily routines become anchors for new behavior. The mind loves patterns. It operates through association. If you attach a new discipline to something you already do regularly, it becomes easier to remember and maintain. For example, if you already drink coffee every morning, you can use that moment to read 1 page of a book or write down 1 goal for the day. Over time, the action becomes automatic because it's attached to an established cue. Habit stacking transforms discipline from a forced effort into a natural rhythm. The process of building discipline also benefits from simplicity. One of the most effective techniques for consistency is what productivity expert James Clear calls the 2-minute rule. The principle is simple. When you start a new habit, make it so easy that it takes less than 2 minutes to begin. The purpose is not to accomplish the entire task, but to overcome inertia. The hardest part of any action is starting. If your goal is to work out, just put on your shoes. If your goal is to write, open the document. If your goal is to read, open the book. Once you start, momentum takes over. The brain resists grand efforts, but cooperates with small beginnings. Over time, those small beginnings compound into massive progress. The beauty of the 2-minute rule is that it trains you to focus on showing up rather than finishing perfectly. Perfectionism kills discipline because it creates unrealistic expectations that lead to burnout. But when you focus on consistency, on the act of starting, you remove the weight of pressure. Discipline grows in simplicity. The person who does a little every day will always outperform the person who does a lot occasionally. The secret is to start small, stay steady, and build momentum. True discipline is not rigid or harsh. It is compassionate and firm. It doesn't demand perfection. It demands presence. There will be days when you slip, when exhaustion or doubt win for a moment. But discipline doesn't end in failure. It begins again. The disciplined mind forgives quickly and refocuses immediately. It understands that consistency is not about never missing a day. It's about never quitting entirely. Each time you begin again, you reinforce resilience. Each time you push through resistance, you remind yourself of your strength. Discipline is freedom in disguise. It may feel restrictive at first, but in reality, it liberates you from the chaos of indecision, the paralysis of procrastination, and the instability of emotion. When your life is governed by discipline, you don't need to wait for inspiration. You create it through motion. You don't need to rely on fleeting energy. You rely on structure. Discipline turns ordinary people into extraordinary achievers because it aligns effort with intention. Spiritual teachers often say that discipline is the highest form of self-love. It is the willingness to do what your future self will thank you for, even when your present self resists. It is treating your potential as sacred and protecting it from the distractions of comfort. Discipline is not punishment. It is devotion. It is a daily act of honoring the vision within you by showing up for it consistently. As you continue this journey, understand that the goal is not to eliminate motivation, but to stop depending on it. Motivation can come and go, but discipline endures. It is the structure upon which lasting transformation is built. When your habits become rooted in discipline, you stop waiting to feel ready. You act because readiness is born from repetition. The disciplined person doesn't need to chase success. Success becomes inevitable. They have learned to build momentum through small actions, to create systems that support their vision, and to move forward even on days when inspiration is absent. They have learned the secret that most never discover. That greatness is not a product of emotional highs, but of daily, deliberate consistency. When you master discipline, you master yourself. And once you master yourself, you become unstoppable. Not because you never get tired, but because you know how to move forward even when you are. Discipline is the quiet strength that outlasts motivation, the muscle that grows with every small victory, and the habit that ensures you never again depend on moods to fulfill your mission. Chapter 6. Habit 5. Emotional regulation. There is a truth few people ever learn early enough. You cannot control the world, but you can control how you respond to it. The difference between those who crumble under pressure and those who rise through it is not luck, strength, or circumstance. It is emotional regulation. To master your emotions is to reclaim your power. To be enslaved by them is to give that power away, moment by moment, reaction by reaction. The storms of life are inevitable. What matters is not whether they come, but whether you know how to steady your ship when they do. Emotions are powerful forces, ancient, instinctive, and deeply woven into the fabric of our biology. They are not enemies to be silenced, but messengers to be understood. Every emotion you feel carries a signal, a piece of information about your inner world. Anger tells you something feels unjust. Fear warns you that something feels unsafe. Sadness signals loss or longing. Even envy reveals a hidden desire or aspiration. Yet, when left unregulated, these emotions can hijack your clarity, distort your perception, and lead you into decisions that do not serve your higher self. Understanding emotional regulation begins with awareness, noticing the triggers that ignite your strongest reactions. Emotional triggers are like hidden switches in the mind, installed by past experiences. A single tone of voice, a word, or a glance can activate them, summoning memories of old wounds or unmet needs. When triggered, the brain's limbic system, particularly the amygdala, floods the body with stress hormones, preparing it for fight, flight, or freeze. This physiological response happens faster than conscious thought, which is why emotional reactions often feel automatic and uncontrollable. But awareness allows you to intercept this process. The moment you can name what you're feeling, you begin to reclaim authority over it. For example, imagine someone criticizes your work, and you instantly feel defensive. Beneath that reaction might not be arrogance or anger, but an old belief: I'm not good enough. That belief acts as the hidden wire behind the trigger. Without awareness, you react impulsively. With awareness, you respond intelligently. Instead of exploding or withdrawing, you pause, breathe, and observe what's really happening inside. This pause is not weakness, it's mastery. It is the moment when emotional energy stops controlling you and starts serving you. The foundation of emotional regulation lies in the body. Because emotions are physical before they are psychological. You feel them first in your chest, your gut, your breath, your muscles. This is why breathing and grounding practices are so powerful. They intercept the body's stress response and signal safety to the brain. When you take slow, deliberate breaths, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms the storm of adrenaline. A few deep breaths can bring you back to the present, where clarity lives. Grounding, too, anchors you in the now. Simply placing your feet firmly on the floor, noticing the weight of your body, and focusing on your senses, what you can see, hear, and feel, recenters you. The body becomes a bridge back to calm. Once calm returns, you can begin reframing your response, a powerful mental shift that changes your relationship with emotion itself. Reframing is the art of changing the meaning you assign to an event. It is not denial, but reinterpretation. For instance, instead of seeing fear as a sign of weakness, you can reframe it as an indication that you're stepping into something meaningful. Instead of seeing anger as destructive, you can see it as energy asking to be channeled into action or assertiveness. When you reframe, you move from reacting unconsciously to responding creatively. You turn emotion into information. Emotional regulation does not mean suppressing your feelings. Suppression is a form of emotional neglect. It traps energy in the body and often resurfaces later in unhealthy ways. Regulation is about expression with awareness. It's allowing yourself to feel fully but respond wisely. A person who can experience anger without aggression, fear without paralysis, and sadness without despair possesses true strength. This level of mastery doesn't happen overnight, but it can be cultivated through emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is often misunderstood as a natural trait, something you either have or you don't. In reality, it is a skill that can be learned, refined, and strengthened. It involves recognizing your own emotions, understanding how they influence your behavior, and perceiving the emotions of others with empathy and clarity. Emotional intelligence bridges the gap between awareness and action. It helps you navigate complex situations, communicate effectively, and build relationships that thrive on trust rather than tension. Developing emotional intelligence requires honesty. You must be willing to look at your emotional patterns without judgment. What triggers you most often? What emotions do you avoid? How do you behave when you feel threatened or vulnerable? These reflections are uncomfortable, but they're the birthplace of growth. The moment you see your patterns clearly, you stop being a puppet to them. You begin to catch yourself mid-reaction and choose differently. Emotional intelligence also involves empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. When you can see beyond your own emotional lens, you begin to communicate from a place of connection rather than conflict. Empathy diffuses tension. It allows you to listen without defensiveness and speak without attack. It turns confrontation into collaboration. A regulated mind leads to regulated interactions, and when two emotionally aware people communicate, peace naturally follows. But emotional regulation isn't just about calmness. It's about transformation. Every emotion carries energy, and energy can be redirected. Anger, when harnessed, becomes passion, a fire that drives progress. Fear, when understood, becomes alertness, a signal to prepare rather than panic. Doubt, when examined, becomes discernment, a tool for clarity and caution. The key is to use emotion as fuel rather than friction. Imagine what would happen if every ounce of frustration you've ever felt was converted into focused determination. That is the power of emotional alchemy, turning raw emotion into refined purpose. To practice this transformation, begin by noticing where emotion lives in your body. When you feel anger, where does it reside? Your chest? Your stomach? Rather than fighting it, breathe into it. Energy moves when it's acknowledged. Then ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Perhaps anger is revealing a boundary that's been crossed, or fear is reminding you to prepare more deeply. When you decode the message instead of reacting to the noise, emotion becomes your teacher rather than your tormentor. Over time, you will notice that emotional regulation gives birth to peace, not the passive kind that avoids conflict, but the active kind that stands steady in chaos. Life will not stop challenging you. People will still disappoint, plans will still fail, and unexpected storms will still come. But when your emotions no longer rule you, you meet those storms with grounded strength. You no longer drown in every wave. You learn to surf them. There is a spiritual dimension to emotional regulation as well. Many ancient traditions teach that emotions are energies in motion, vibrations that, when acknowledged and channeled, can elevate consciousness. When you hold on to negative emotions, you lower your vibration and cloud your intuition. But when you process emotions with awareness, you purify your inner state. You create space for love, wisdom, and clarity to flow through you. In this sense, mastering your emotions is not just psychological, it is deeply spiritual. It is how the soul learns to stay centered in a world of constant motion. Discipline over your emotions is not the same as detachment from them. Detachment numbs, mastery empowers. A regulated emotional life is one where you can feel deeply yet act wisely, where the heart remains open but the mind remains steady. You become less reactive, more responsive, less easily shaken, and more anchored in purpose. You begin to see that emotions are not problems to solve, but waves to ride, each one teaching you balance, resilience, and depth. Emotional regulation is self-leadership. It's the ability to stay calm under pressure, to respond instead of react, and to choose peace over chaos, even when chaos surrounds you. It's what allows you to lead others, love deeply, and pursue purpose with unwavering focus. You will never stop feeling, but you can always choose how to feel, and that choice is where your freedom lies. When you master your emotions, you no longer need to fear them. You welcome them as guides rather than threats. You no longer get lost in anger, fear, or doubt because you've learned to turn them into strength, awareness, and clarity. The mind may think, but it is the emotional self that determines how you live. If you can rule the emotional kingdom within, no force outside of you can truly conquer you. Emotional mastery is not about control, it's about harmony. It's the art of remaining grounded in your truth, no matter what storms blow through your life. It's about transforming emotional energy into creative force, chaos into clarity, reaction into reflection. To master your emotions is to master your life, for emotions are the undercurrent of every thought, every action, and every decision. When you learn to regulate them, you step into your highest power, calm, conscious, and unshakably free. Chapter 7, Habit 6, Growth Through Failure. Failure is one of the most misunderstood words in the human vocabulary. For many, it carries the weight of shame, inadequacy, and defeat. We're conditioned from childhood to associate failure with rejection and embarrassment, a red mark on a test paper, a disappointed look from a teacher, a door closed after an interview. Over time, these experiences form a silent fear that shapes our behavior. We begin to avoid risks, silence our creativity, and stay within the narrow lines of safety. But failure, when seen correctly, is not an enemy. It is a mentor, a ruthless yet reliable teacher that reveals truth success often conceals. Growth does not happen in comfort. It happens in the moments when you stumble, fall, and choose to rise again. To grow through failure, you must first redefine what failure actually is. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. It is not a signal to stop, but a signpost to redirect. Every attempt that doesn't go as planned is information. Feedback from life itself about what doesn't work, what needs refinement, or what lessons remain unlearned. The only true failure is the one that teaches you nothing. Everything else is progress disguised as disappointment. Yet most people never reach this understanding because fear of failure keeps them paralyzed. The fear of looking foolish, of being judged, or of losing what little security they have stops them before they even begin. The mind whispers, "What if I fail?" And imagination instantly paints the worst possible outcomes: humiliation, loss, rejection. This fear is deeply rooted in the survival brain, which equates uncertainty with danger. But in modern life, that ancient instinct becomes a mental cage. Instead of protecting you, it imprisons you. You begin to play small, dream small, and live small. You convince yourself that it's safer not to try than to try and fail. But what's truly dangerous is not failure, it's stagnation. Growth requires movement, and movement requires risk. Every person who has achieved greatness has made peace with failure. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Each misstep brought him closer to discovery. The Wright brothers crashed countless times before they learned how to control flight. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job and told she was unfit for TV. Michael Jordan, widely regarded as one of the greatest athletes of all time, once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. I've failed over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." These people didn't succeed despite failure. They succeeded through it. They learned that failure is feedback, a mirror reflecting what needs adjustment. Every fall refined their approach. Every rejection deepened their understanding, and every setback strengthened their resolve. The difference between those who grow and those who give up is not talent or intelligence, but interpretation. Successful people see failure as data. Unsuccessful people see it as defeat. When you adopt this mindset, failure loses its power to humiliate you. Instead of internalizing it, "I failed, therefore I'm a failure," you externalize it. "That approach didn't work. I'll try another." You shift from self-judgment to self-inquiry. You begin to see failure as part of a natural process called the learning loop. Every learning loop has 3 stages: reflection, relearning, and reapplication. Reflection is where growth begins. It's the moment after the fall when you stop and ask, what actually happened? Reflection requires honesty without judgment. It's easy to either blame others or drown in self-pity, but true reflection demands balance, seeing both your mistakes and your strengths. You ask questions like, what worked? What didn't? What could I do differently next time? Reflection turns emotion into insight. Relearning follows reflection. Once you understand what went wrong, you have the opportunity to integrate the lesson. Relearning means updating your mental model of how things work. It's humility in action, the willingness to admit that your old way of thinking or doing wasn't enough. When you relearn, you grow not only in knowledge, but in wisdom. You realize that each setback carried a hidden curriculum, lessons in patience, timing, communication, or preparation that success might have hidden from you. Then comes reapplication, the courage to try again with what you've learned. This is the stage where resilience is born. Most people stop after reflection because fear convinces them not to repeat the pain. But those who reapply grow exponentially because each attempt now comes with more clarity. You're no longer starting from scratch, you're starting from experience. Every repetition builds both skill and confidence. The loop continues. Reflect, relearn, reapply, and each cycle refines you. Over time, you become not only better at what you do, but stronger in who you are. Resilience, in this sense, is not the absence of pain, but the ability to keep moving through it. It's the emotional armor forged by falling and rising again. People who have never failed deeply often crumble at the first sign of struggle because they lack this armor. Those who've been tested, on the other hand, develop an inner sturdiness. They've learned that setbacks are temporary and that no defeat is final unless you accept it as such. Resilience grows when you face adversity with curiosity instead of despair. Think of a tree that grows on a windy hill. Because it faces resistance daily, its roots grow deeper, its trunk stronger. The same wind that could break a weaker tree becomes the very force that shapes its resilience. The same applies to you. Every challenge, rejection, or failure you endure deepens your character and clarifies your purpose, if you let it. The most resilient people are not the ones who had the easiest paths, but those who allowed hardship to polish rather than poison them. Failure also teaches emotional maturity. It humbles you without destroying you. It teaches empathy for others who struggle. When you've faced your own disappointments, you learn not to judge others too quickly. You understand that success is rarely linear. It is a series of rises and falls, each one contributing to the final form. Emotional maturity allows you to detach your self-worth from your outcomes. You stop seeing results as reflections of your identity and start seeing them as reflections of your process. In many ways, Failure is the universe's way of redirecting you. Sometimes, what feels like loss is actually protection. A closed door might be a nudge toward a better one. A rejection might be redirection. The project that collapses, the relationship that ends, the job that doesn't work out. Each could be clearing space for something that aligns more deeply with who you are becoming. Growth through failure requires faith, the belief that every detour still leads you forward. But this faith is not blind optimism. It's cultivated through reflection. When you look back at your life, you'll often find that your greatest breakthroughs came after your biggest breakdowns. What once felt like the end turned out to be a beginning in disguise. Failure often rearranges your priorities, strips away ego, and reveals what truly matters. It refines your character and strengthens your conviction. The pain of failure may be sharp, but the wisdom it produces lasts a lifetime. To truly grow through failure, you must practice gratitude for it. That might sound impossible at first, but gratitude reframes failure from punishment to preparation. When you can say, "This didn't go as planned, but I trust it's teaching me something valuable," you shift from victimhood to mastery. Gratitude turns pain into perspective. Growth through failure also transforms your relationship with fear. Once you've failed and survived, you realize that failure is not fatal. The worst thing you imagined rarely happens, and even when it does, you adapt. Fear loses its grip because experience has shown you that you're stronger than you thought. Each recovery reinforces self-trust, the quiet confidence that no matter what happens, you'll find your way. Failure is not something to run from. It's something to lean into. Each time you fail, you're collecting data about what works and what doesn't. You're developing intuition, sharpening discernment, and building emotional muscle. You begin to see patterns, how life teaches you the same lessons until you master them. Failure, then, is not the end of the road but part of the path itself. The greatest tragedy is not to fail, but to fear failure so much that you never discover who you could have been. Every masterpiece, invention, and success story carries a trail of mistakes behind it. Failed experiments, abandoned drafts, wrong turns. But through those failures, creators refine their craft. Entrepreneurs refine their ideas, and leaders refine their vision. Perfection was never the point. Progress was. Growth through failure is not about glorifying pain, but about extracting wisdom from it. It's the understanding that every collapse contains the seed of a comeback. The most successful minds do not avoid failure. They outgrow their fear of it. They understand that the road to mastery is paved with missteps, and that each stumble teaches them to walk more steadily. When you learn to embrace failure as feedback, your entire mindset shifts. You no longer dread mistakes, you study them. You no longer see rejection as a wall, you see it as redirection. You stop measuring your worth by outcomes and start measuring it by courage. Because in the end, success is not about never falling. It's about never staying down. To grow through failure is to live bravely, to show up, take risks, and learn with humility. It is to understand that the purpose of life is not to avoid pain, but to evolve through it. Failure is the sculptor of character, the refiner of vision, and the proof that you dare to try. When you embrace it fully, you become unstoppable, not because you never lose, but because you always learn. Chapter 8, Habit 7, Environment Engineering. There is a profound truth about human behavior that many people overlook. You are not just a product of your willpower. You are a product of your environment. The people you spend time with, the spaces you occupy, the information you consume, and even the sounds, colors, and objects around you quietly shape your thoughts, habits, and identity. You may have the strongest desire to grow, to think positively, to change your life, but if your environment constantly reinforces the opposite, it will always pull you back to old patterns. You cannot plant a seed meant for sunlight in the shadows and expect it to flourish. You rise, or you fall, to the level of your environment. Every environment either fuels growth or fosters stagnation. It can inspire you to become your highest self, or subtly drain you into mediocrity. Many people blame themselves for lacking motivation, when in truth, their surroundings are silently programming them for distraction and defeat. Your brain is always absorbing cues from what it sees, hears, and feels. These cues trigger associations that influence your emotions and decisions, often without your awareness. The science behind this is known as priming, a psychological phenomenon where your environment subtly influences your thoughts and behavior. For example, a study found that people exposed to words related to old age like retirement or slow actually began to walk more slowly afterward. Another study showed that people in tidy rooms made healthier choices than those in cluttered spaces. Your surroundings are constantly communicating with your subconscious mind, setting the tone for how you think and act. Imagine walking into a gym filled with music, energy, and people pushing their limits. The moment you step inside, your mindset shifts. You feel motivated to move. Now, picture stepping into a dimly lit room filled with junk food and noise. Your energy instantly drops. That is the power of environmental priming. It shapes your mental state long before you make a conscious decision. This is why environment engineering, deliberately designing your surroundings to support your goals, is one of the most powerful yet overlooked habits of mindset mastery. Your social environment is just as important. The people you regularly interact with are mirrors, reflecting and reinforcing who you are becoming. You begin to think, speak, and even feel like the people you spend the most time with. Their energy becomes contagious. Enthusiasm, ambition, and optimism elevate you, while negativity, gossip, and complacency drain you. If you surround yourself with people who constantly complain, criticize, or settle for less, you'll find it difficult to rise above their frequency. But if you intentionally place yourself among people who challenge you, inspire you, and believe in growth, you will inevitably expand. There's a saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, not just financially or professionally, but emotionally and spiritually. Look around your circle and ask yourself, do these people feed my vision or starve it? Do they push me toward excellence or pull me toward comfort? Growth requires courageous pruning. Sometimes you must love people from a distance while surrounding yourself with those who reflect your next level. The right environment makes discipline natural. The wrong environment makes it nearly impossible. But the environment you must guard most fiercely today is not physical, it's digital. In a world of constant connectivity, your phone, laptop, and social feeds have become mental ecosystems of their own. Every scroll, every notification, every video, every post is a form of exposure, and exposure equals influence. What you see repeatedly becomes normalized in your mind. If your digital space is filled with comparison, chaos, and controversy, your thoughts will mirror that energy. Without realizing it, you start thinking in reaction rather than intention. A digital detox is not about abandoning technology. It's about reclaiming control over it. It's the conscious act of creating boundaries between your attention and the noise of the world. Every time you open your phone, you invite hundreds of voices into your mental space. Marketers, influencers, news cycles, opinions. Your brain was not designed to process this much stimulation. Over time, this constant input dulls focus, breeds anxiety, and fragments attention. To rewire your mindset for clarity, you must learn to curate what enters your consciousness. Begin by decluttering your digital life. Unfollow accounts that make you feel inadequate, anxious, or angry. Mute notifications that interrupt your flow. Replace mindless scrolling with mindful consumption. Fill your feeds with content that educates, uplifts, and aligns with your purpose. Remember, what you feed your mind is as important as what you feed your body. You wouldn't eat junk food all day and expect to feel healthy. The same rule applies to thoughts. Digital decluttering is not about deprivation. It's about nourishment. The same principle applies to your physical environment. Clutter is not just an aesthetic problem. It's a mental one. A messy desk reflects and reinforces a scattered mind. Every unfinished pile, every unorganized drawer, sends subtle messages of overwhelm and delay to your brain. The mind craves order because clarity thrives in clean spaces. When you declutter your surroundings, you declutter your thoughts. You create space for creativity, focus, and peace to emerge. Minimalism is not about owning less. It's about creating room for what truly matters. Designing environments that cue success means making the path to positive habits effortless and the path to destructive ones difficult. If you want to read more, place a book beside your bed or on your coffee table. If you want to eat healthier, keep fruits visible and store junk food out of sight. If you want to spend less time on your phone, leave it in another room while you work. These small environmental cues silently direct your behavior without requiring constant willpower. When success is built into your surroundings, it becomes automatic. Even the smallest environmental shift can produce profound internal change. The colors you choose, the scents in your space, the sounds that fill your ears, all of these influence your emotional state. Bright, natural light increases alertness and optimism. Soft music can calm anxiety. A few plants can lower stress levels and enhance focus. You can design your environment to remind your brain of who you are becoming. Some people create vision boards or place affirmations on mirrors, walls, or desktops. These are not just decorations. They are anchors, physical reminders of your mental and spiritual commitments. Environment engineering also includes setting energetic boundaries. Protecting your peace is an act of self-respect. Learn to say no to environments that deplete you, even if they're familiar. Decline conversations that revolve around gossip or negativity. Step out of spaces where your dreams are belittled. Energy is contagious. Guard yours like treasure. Every place you go, every person you engage, every piece of content you consume leaves an energetic fingerprint on your mind. When you become selective about where you invest your attention, your inner clarity strengthens. Spiritual traditions across the world have long understood the link between environment and consciousness. Monks, mystics, and sages often retreat to quiet spaces, mountains, forests, temples, not because enlightenment only exists there, but because such environments minimize distraction and amplify awareness. You don't need a monastery to cultivate focus, but you do need an intentional atmosphere that supports inner stillness. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. If you seek peace within, begin by creating peace around. The beautiful thing about environment engineering is that it doesn't demand perfection. It requires intentionality. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Start with one corner, one habit, one relationship. Gradually replace chaos with order, noise with stillness, and negativity with inspiration. Over time, your environment becomes an extension of your purpose, a living mirror of your vision. When your surroundings are aligned with your goals, your mind naturally rises to match them. You begin to think with greater clarity, act with greater consistency, and feel with greater peace. Decisions that once required immense willpower now feel effortless because your environment does half the work for you. The space you live in becomes a silent coach, guiding you toward your best self. Environment engineering is not just about aesthetics or productivity. It is about alignment. It's about creating spaces, both physical and digital, that reflect the life you are building, not the one you are leaving behind. It's about surrounding yourself with energy that supports your evolution. You cannot change your destiny overnight, but you can change your environment today, and your environment will change you. When you walk into a space that inspires clarity, when you spend time with people who fuel your faith, when you consume information that expands your mind, you elevate your entire being. You become the kind of person who no longer has to fight for focus, motivation, or consistency, because your environment now whispers the same message your soul already knows. You are made to rise. Chapter 9. Habit 8. Visualization and mental rehearsal. Before anything is built in the world, it must first be built in the mind. Every bridge, symphony, invention, or success began as an invisible image, an idea vividly seen by someone who believed in it before anyone else did. The mind is not just a place of thought. It is a creative workshop where imagination becomes the blueprint for reality. Visualization, the art of mentally rehearsing the future you desire, is not a new age fantasy. It is one of the most powerful tools of transformation available to the human spirit. Seeing it until you believe it is how every great transformation begins, because belief is born not from evidence, but from imagination. The science behind visualization is both fascinating and irrefutable. Neuroscientists have discovered that the brain does not differentiate vividly imagined experiences from real ones. When you visualize performing an action, the same neural pathways activate as if you were physically doing it. This phenomenon, known as functional equivalence, means that mental rehearsal can strengthen your mind and body in the same way real practice can. Athletes, musicians, and top performers across the world use visualization to refine their skills, sharpen focus, and enhance confidence. Not because it's mystical, but because it's neurological. In one famous study, researchers asked 3 groups of people to practice shooting basketball free throws. The first group practiced physically every day. The second group practiced mentally, visualizing themselves making perfect shots. The third group did nothing. After several weeks, the physical practice group improved by about 24%, but astonishingly, the mental practice group improved almost the same, by 23%. Their brains have been training their bodies without ever touching a basketball. This study, and countless others like it, reveal that visualization doesn't just prepare you psychologically. It rewires your brain to perform as though you've already succeeded. When you visualize your goals with clarity, emotion, and repetition, you train your subconscious mind to expect that reality. The subconscious doesn't operate on logic. It operates on imagery and feeling. It takes the pictures you repeatedly show it and begins aligning your behavior to make those images come true. Visualization is not daydreaming. It's mental conditioning. It programs your inner world so powerfully that your outer world eventually catches up. To harness this power, you must create a clear and compelling image of your future self. This is the version of you who has already achieved what you desire. The confident entrepreneur, the calm leader, the healthy individual, the fulfilled partner, the disciplined creator. The clearer you can see this person, the easier it becomes to become them. Visualization works because it bridges the gap between who you are and who you are becoming. It brings the future into the present by allowing your mind to experience it now. Creating a future self blueprint begins with imagination, but it must be detailed. Close your eyes and picture your life as if everything you've been working toward is already manifested. What does a day in that life look like? How do you wake up? What does your environment look like? What sounds fill your space? How do you carry yourself? Your posture, your tone, your energy. What kind of people surround you? What emotions dominate your heart? The more vivid and sensory the image, the more powerful its impact. Visualization is most effective when it involves all the senses. Don't just see your success, feel it, hear it, even smell it. Imagine the sound of your voice speaking with confidence, the feeling of gratitude flooding your chest, the calm assurance that your goals are unfolding. When you merge emotion with imagery, you create a magnetic frequency in your subconscious mind that begins attracting circumstances, ideas, and opportunities aligned with that vision. This is where science meets spirituality, the union of focus and faith. Faith is the invisible bridge between what is imagined and what becomes real. Visualization strengthens faith by giving your belief something tangible to hold on to. Faith without vision can feel abstract. Vision without faith fades under pressure. But when you combine the two, faith that it's possible and focus on what it looks like, you activate a creative force within you that transcends logic. This is why spiritual texts often emphasize the power of seeing through the eyes of belief. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. You become what you consistently see in your mind and feel in your heart. Confidence is another powerful byproduct of visualization. When you repeatedly see yourself succeeding, your brain builds familiarity with that scenario. It stops perceiving success as foreign or intimidating. This mental rehearsal dissolves fear and self-doubt because your subconscious begins to treat success as something you've already experienced. Athletes call this pre-winning. They visualize victory so vividly that when the moment comes, their body performs naturally, not out of anxiety, but memory. You can do the same with any goal. When you visualize giving a presentation flawlessly, running a marathon, or launching your business, you're creating a mental memory of success that makes real performance flow with ease. Visualization also influences decision-making. When your subconscious is saturated with an image of your desired future, you begin to notice opportunities that align with it, a phenomenon known as selective attention. Your mind's reticular activating system, RAS, filters information based on what it deems important. If you constantly visualize abundance and growth, your brain will start highlighting paths that lead there. But if your mental imagery is dominated by fear, failure, and scarcity, your mind will filter the world accordingly. You won't even see doors that are open because your mental map says they're closed. This is why visualization must be practiced with discipline and precision. The mind cannot distinguish between positive and negative imagery. It simply reproduces whatever you feed it. If you spend your mental energy replaying worst-case scenarios, you are unconsciously rehearsing fear. But if you use that same imagination to rehearse confidence, peace, and progress, your mind begins preparing you for those outcomes instead. Every image you hold is a seed. What you focus on will grow. To make visualization a daily habit, find moments of stillness where you can retreat from noise and distraction. Early mornings and late evenings are ideal because the mind is naturally relaxed and the subconscious is most receptive. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and breathe deeply. Let your thoughts settle. Then, begin to imagine your desired reality as vividly as possible. See it as if it's happening now. Feel the emotions associated with it: gratitude, pride, joy, peace. The emotion is the electricity that powers the image. Without feeling, visualization is just wishful thinking. With feeling, it becomes a creative act. After visualizing, take small, aligned actions. The purpose of visualization is not to escape reality, but to enhance it. Mental imagery must be followed by physical movement. The universe responds to energy in motion. Each time you act on your vision, you strengthen the link between imagination and reality. It's like connecting two ends of an electrical circuit, thought and action, allowing energy to flow freely between them. Over time, your behavior begins to mirror your vision, and your life begins to reflect your belief. Faith, focus, and feeling form the holy trinity of manifestation. Faith gives your vision substance. Focus sharpens it into clarity. Feeling brings it to life. When these three are aligned, you enter a state of coherence where your mind, body, and spirit move in the same direction. In this state, manifestation becomes natural, not forced but fluent. You begin to notice synchronicities, moments where life seems to align perfectly with your inner pictures. The right people appear, the right doors open, and the right timing unfolds, not by chance but by alignment. Visualization and mental rehearsal also cultivate emotional intelligence. They train you to manage your emotional state intentionally. When you practice seeing yourself calm under pressure, patient in chaos, or courageous in uncertainty, you're rehearsing emotional mastery. You're building neural pathways for composure and resilience. When life tests you, your brain recalls those rehearsed states and guides you toward them naturally. You begin to live from intention rather than reaction. There is also a deeply spiritual dimension to visualization. It reconnects you with your divine creative power. Every human being is born with the ability to imagine, and imagination is the mind's way of touching the unseen. When you visualize, you're not fabricating fantasy. You're aligning with potential. You're calling forth what already exists in a higher realm of possibility and giving it form through thought. Creation, in its purest form, is thought made visible. Many people think they lack resources, but what they truly lack is vision. Without vision, even abundance feels insufficient. With vision, even scarcity becomes creative. Visualization is the reminder that everything you need to build the future you desire already exists. It simply awaits your focused attention. The clearer you see it, the faster it begins to take shape. Over time, as you practice visualization consistently, you will begin to notice subtle but powerful changes. Your inner dialogue will shift from doubt to determination. Your body will carry a quiet confidence. Your decisions will align more naturally with your dreams. And most importantly, you will start to feel as though you are already living the life you once only imagined. That feeling, that deep inner knowing, is what magnetizes your vision into being. Seeing it until you believe it is not about pretending. It's about preparing. It's about training your mind to recognize abundance, training your heart to expect miracles, and training your spirit to walk in faith, even when the evidence isn't visible yet. Visualization is rehearsal for destiny. When done with intention, it becomes the bridge between thought and reality, belief and experience, the unseen and the manifest. The greatest creations in history began as mental rehearsals in someone's mind, and the same power exists in yours. You hold within you the ability to design, refine, and align your inner world until your outer world cannot help but mirror it. When you see it clearly, feel it deeply, and act upon it consistently, what was once invisible will become undeniable. Visualization is not just a tool for success. It is the language of creation itself, the whisper through which your future begins to speak. Chapter 10. Habit 9. Learning and Unlearning. The greatest minds are not those who know the most, but those who remain teachable. The truly wise are not imprisoned by what they know. They are liberated by their willingness to question it. In a world that evolves faster than ever, adaptability has become a superpower. The ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is now more valuable than intelligence alone. You cannot grow if your mind is rigid, and you cannot lead if your perspective is outdated. To master the art of living and leading in a constantly changing world, you must embrace the lifelong dance between learning and unlearning. The danger of mental rigidity lies in its quiet deception. A rigid mind often believes it is right simply because it is familiar. It clings to old patterns of thinking not because they still work, but because they feel safe. Mental rigidity is like a fortress built for protection that eventually becomes a prison. You stop questioning your assumptions, you defend your limitations, and you call it being realistic. Yet, what feels safe can be the very thing that stifles growth. Many people fail not because they lack potential, but because they refuse to evolve. They hold on to the comfort of old knowledge in a world that constantly demands new understanding. The human mind loves certainty. It craves patterns and predictable answers. But certainty can become a silent enemy of progress. The moment you decide you already know everything worth knowing, learning stops. When your mind becomes fixed, every new idea feels like a threat rather than an opportunity. You begin to filter information not to understand, but to confirm. You stop listening to learn and start listening to defend. This is how innovation dies, not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of openness. To break free from mental rigidity, you must cultivate intellectual humility, the courage to admit that what brought you here may not take you further. The willingness to unlearn is the hallmark of true intelligence. Unlearning is not forgetting. It is consciously releasing ideas, habits, and beliefs that no longer serve your growth. It's acknowledging that some of what you once believed to be true was based on limited experience, outdated context, or borrowed opinions. Unlearning is the inner work of updating your mental operating system so it can run the programs of your current reality. Unlearning begins with awareness, noticing the patterns of thought that keep you trapped in the past. Many of our beliefs are inherited, not chosen. They were absorbed from parents, culture, religion, or early experiences and accepted as truth before we had the maturity to question them. For example, you might have been taught that success only comes through struggle, that vulnerability is weakness, or that failure defines your worth. These beliefs can silently govern your choices for decades, shaping your identity and limiting your potential. But once you bring them to light, you gain the power to rewrite them. The process of unlearning requires curiosity. You must ask yourself, what if this belief isn't true anymore? And what might be possible if I let this go? These questions open mental doors that rigidity keeps locked. You begin to see that every belief is just a lens, and sometimes the lens becomes the limitation. Growth requires the courage to change lenses, to see the world, yourself, and others from new perspectives. Unlearning also demands emotional maturity, because it often means confronting your ego. The ego loves being right. It fears being wrong. It equates knowledge with identity. I know this, therefore I am this. But the ego's attachment to certainty can prevent transformation. True learners must be willing to feel the discomfort of not knowing. They must be willing to release pride in favor of progress. The moment you stop needing to be right, You become free to learn again, to unlearn outdated beliefs. You must expose yourself to diverse perspectives. Read books outside your comfort zone. Listen to people whose experiences challenge your worldview. Travel to new places. Engage in conversations that stretch your thinking. The goal is not to agree with everything you hear, but to expand your capacity to see. Every new idea acts as a mirror, reflecting parts of yourself you didn't know existed. Exposure widens understanding, and understanding deepens wisdom. Just as important as unlearning is the habit of becoming a lifelong learner. The mind, like a muscle, grows stronger through consistent use. Learning keeps it supple, curious, and alive. A lifelong learner approaches life as an endless classroom. Every experience, success, and setback becomes an opportunity to extract wisdom. They understand that the world is not static. Technology, science, culture, and human behavior are always shifting. What worked yesterday may fail tomorrow. The only way to stay relevant, fulfilled, and mentally sharp is to keep learning. Becoming a lifelong learner means transforming learning from an obligation into a lifestyle. It's not confined to formal education, but woven into the fabric of daily living. You learn when you observe how people respond to you, when you reflect on a mistake, when you try something new. The key is curiosity, a deep, childlike desire to understand. Curiosity is the antidote to arrogance. It keeps the mind open, alert, and expanding. When you are curious, you see every situation as a teacher. You start to welcome questions more than answers because questions lead to growth, while fixed answers often lead to stagnation. The secret to mastery is not perfection, but perpetual learning. Even the masters, artists, scientists, athletes, entrepreneurs, remain students of their craft. They never stop refining, questioning, and experimenting. Mastery is not a destination, but a state of constant refinement. The more you know, the more you realize how much there is yet to discover. This humility keeps you evolving while others plateau. A powerful principle that fuels lifelong learning is the beginner's mind. Derived from Zen philosophy, it refers to approaching every situation with the openness, eagerness, and curiosity of a beginner, even when you are experienced. The beginner's mind is free from the clutter of assumptions and the arrogance of expertise. It sees possibilities that experts overlook because experts often think they've seen it all. The beginner's mind asks, "What can I learn here?" The expert's mind says, "I already know." In a world that changes daily, the beginner's mind thrives because it adapts faster than the experts. The beginner's mind is not naive. It is wise enough to know that certainty is an illusion. It lives in wonder rather than judgment. When you cultivate this mindset, life becomes endlessly fascinating. Challenges become puzzles instead of threats, and every new experience becomes an invitation to grow. You stop measuring yourself by what you know and start measuring by how willing you are to keep learning. That shift is where mastery begins, not in the accumulation of information, but in the expansion of awareness. Learning and unlearning also have an emotional component. When you unlearn, you make space for healing. Many of the patterns that keep you stuck emotionally, fear, resentment, insecurity, are learned responses. You learn to protect yourself, to shrink to avoid rejection, to please others for acceptance. Unlearning means releasing these survival habits and replacing them with healthier ones. It means retraining your mind and heart to respond with openness rather than defense. In this way, unlearning is not just intellectual, it's deeply personal and spiritual. To sustain the habit of learning and unlearning, you must cultivate humility and patience. Growth is not linear. There will be moments when unlearning feels uncomfortable, when old identities crumble before new ones form. In those moments, remind yourself that confusion is not failure. It's a sign of transformation. The caterpillar must dissolve completely before becoming a butterfly. The same is true for your mind. Old mental structures must dissolve to make space for new patterns of thought. The more you practice learning and unlearning, the more adaptable you become. Adaptability is the true measure of intelligence. It allows you to thrive in uncertainty because you're no longer attached to one way of seeing or doing things. You can shift perspectives, reinvent yourself, and embrace change without fear. You stop resisting life and start flowing with it. Spiritually, learning and unlearning mirror the process of awakening. You come into the world full of wonder, then accumulate layers of conditioning, beliefs, fears, identities. The spiritual path is one of unlearning those layers until you return to your true essence, open, curious, and free. Each time you unlearn a limitation, you remember a deeper truth. Learning, then, becomes less about acquiring information and more about remembering who you really are. A flexible mind is a powerful mind. It bends without breaking, adapts without losing integrity, and remains curious in the face of change. When you commit to being both a learner and an unlearner, you free yourself from the illusion of finality. You understand that growth has no finish line and that wisdom is not a static possession, but a living process. Learning and unlearning are not just mental exercises. They are acts of courage. They require you to let go of certainty, to embrace vulnerability, and to step into the unknown again and again. But with each step, you expand in understanding, in compassion, and in capacity. The mind that remains teachable can never grow old. It stays alive, vibrant, and ready for life's next lesson. To stay flexible and adaptable is to stay free. Every moment becomes an opportunity to learn, and every limitation becomes an invitation to unlearn. When you live this way, your mind becomes like water, fluid, clear, and unstoppable, always taking the shape of what is needed, yet never losing its essence. And that is the mark of true mastery. The ability to remain a student, even while you teach, to remain open, even when you know, and to keep evolving, even when the world thinks you've arrived. Chapter 11. Habit 10. Service and Contribution. There comes a point in every journey of personal growth when success, achievement, and self-improvement no longer feel complete on their own. You may have gained knowledge, built discipline, and cultivated peace within yourself, but without extending that transformation outward, something still feels missing. The deepest fulfillment is not found in accumulation, but in contribution. The highest mindset is not one that seeks only to rise, but one that lifts others while rising. True abundance is not measured by what you gather, but by what you give. Human beings are wired for connection and contribution. From the earliest tribes to modern communities, survival and happiness have always been rooted in serving something greater than oneself. Neuroscience has shown that when you engage in acts of generosity, your brain releases oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, the same happiness chemicals triggered by love and joy. This helper's high is not a coincidence. It's biology affirming a universal truth. You are not made to live for yourself alone. The more you contribute to others, the more your mind and body align with peace, meaning, and vitality. Many people chase fulfillment through achievement, wealth, recognition, or personal milestones, only to find the satisfaction fleeting. That's because achievement is about expansion of the self, while fulfillment is about the transcendence of the self. You can achieve many things and still feel empty because self-centered success has a limit. But the moment your growth begins to serve others, your life takes on depth. Contribution turns success into significance. It transforms personal victories into collective elevation. The psychology of purpose and contribution reveals why giving creates such profound satisfaction. Purpose gives structure to existence. Without it, even comfort feels hollow. Viktor Frankl, the renowned psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, observed that those who survived the harshest conditions weren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest, but those who found meaning, a reason beyond themselves to endure. Purpose transforms pain into power. It gives suffering context and joy continuity. When you dedicate yourself to something that benefits others, your life expands beyond your individual story. You become part of something enduring, a ripple that continues long after you are gone. Contribution doesn't always mean grand gestures. It begins in the smallest, most human moments: a kind word, a listening ear, a helping hand. Every act of service, no matter how simple, reinforces a sense of connection between you and the world around you. It reminds you that you belong to something larger, that your existence has meaning beyond your personal goals. When you add value to others, you are participating in the flow of life itself, giving and receiving, teaching and learning, uplifting and being uplifted. Turning personal growth into community impact is where transformation becomes legacy. Growth that ends with you is incomplete. Every lesson you've learned, every pain you've healed, every insight you've gained has the potential to guide someone else. You become a bridge between struggle and understanding, between fear and courage, between potential and purpose. The experiences you once thought were meant to break, you often become the very tools you use to build others. The beauty of service is that it multiplies both ways. When you share your knowledge, you deepen your mastery. When you mentor someone, you sharpen your empathy. When you use your talents to improve another's life, you activate a sense of gratitude that fuels your own growth. Service is cyclical. The more you give, the more you expand. It is impossible to serve sincerely and remain small-minded. Giving stretches you. It requires humility, patience, and compassion, the qualities that turn knowledge into wisdom. Many people hold back from serving because they believe they must have more money, more time, more confidence, more expertise. But service doesn't require perfection. It requires willingness. You don't need to have it all figured out to help others. Sometimes, all you need to do is share what you know now, offer what you can now, give what you have now. The small things done consistently often leave the biggest impact. A word of encouragement at the right time, a resource shared, a kindness extended. These moments ripple through the lives of others in ways you may never see. On a deeper level, serving others rewires your identity for abundance. When you give, you affirm the belief that you have enough to share. Scarcity says, I must hold on to what I have. Abundance says, I always have more to give. This mental shift is powerful. It transforms your relationship with wealth, time, and energy. When you live in contribution, your focus moves from lack to sufficiency, from fear to faith. You begin to see that the universe is not a zero-sum game. The more you give, the more capacity you build to receive. Spiritually, service aligns you with the flow of creation. Every act of genuine giving generates expansion, not just for the receiver, but for the giver. The universe operates on reciprocity. Energy moves in cycles. When you give freely without attachment, that energy returns multiplied. But when you hoard or act only out of self-interest, you disrupt the natural flow of abundance. Serving others opens the channels through which grace, opportunity, and fulfillment flow back into your life. Service also strengthens your sense of identity. It shifts your self-perception from, what can I get, to, who can I become through giving? This evolution of self-perception is profound. When you make others' lives better, you begin to see yourself as capable, valuable, and purposeful. You stop defining your worth by what you possess and start defining it by the difference you make. The ego dissolves, and what emerges is a self rooted in love and contribution. A self that no longer needs to prove its worth because it lives its worth daily through impact. Psychologists have long noted that one of the most effective ways to overcome depression, anxiety, or apathy is through acts of service. When you turn your focus outward, you interrupt cycles of self-centered rumination. The mind, when consumed by personal pain, shrinks inward, replaying fears and regrets. Service breaks that loop. It reminds you that life continues beyond your current struggle and that you still have the power to create goodness even in difficult times. Helping others brings perspective. It transforms suffering into empathy and helplessness into purpose. In a society that glorifies individual achievement, choosing to serve others is an act of quiet rebellion. It goes against the narrative that fulfillment lies only in personal gain. Yet, history consistently proves that the people remembered most are not those who amassed the most wealth or fame, but those who gave themselves to a cause greater than their comfort. People who turned their gifts into service. Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr., and countless unsung heroes all embody this truth. They remind us that greatness is not defined by what you accumulate, but by how deeply you contribute. Service also cultivates humility. It brings you face to face with the shared humanity in others, their struggles, fears, and hopes. It dissolves the illusion of separation and reminds you that we are all interconnected. This humility doesn't diminish you, it expands you. It transforms leadership from domination into stewardship, success from self-centered ambition into collective elevation. When service becomes part of your daily rhythm, it changes how you move through the world. You start to notice opportunities to give, a smile to a stranger, guidance to a colleague, encouragement to a friend, kindness to someone who needs it most. Your presence itself becomes an offering. People feel safer, seen, and inspired around you because you radiate genuine care. This is the quiet power of a service-oriented mindset. It influences not through words, but through example. The highest purpose of personal development is to make you more useful to the world. Every insight you gain, every skill you develop, every healing you experience equips you to serve at a higher level. Growth without contribution eventually feels hollow because your soul was designed not just to grow, but to give. Your purpose expands when it becomes about more than you. In time, you will discover that giving is not a sacrifice, it is a source. It replenishes what it releases. It does not empty you, it renews you. The paradox of service is that in pouring into others, you fill yourself. In lifting others, you rise. In healing others, you are healed. The act of contribution is not just about transforming the world. It is about transforming the self into its most authentic and abundant form. When your life becomes rooted in service, you no longer chase significance. You embody it. Every day becomes an opportunity to add light, to leave things better than you found them, to plant seeds of kindness and growth that will bloom long after you are gone. You realize that legacy is not built in grand monuments, but in quiet moments of impact, in hearts touched, lives changed, and minds inspired. To serve is to live fully. It is to participate in the symphony of humanity, giving, receiving, and co-creating in harmony with others. When your mindset reaches this level, you transcend survival and even success. You enter into significance, the highest state of human consciousness. And in that state, you find what every heart seeks: fulfillment that endures, joy that multiplies, and a sense of purpose that time cannot erase. Service is not the end of the journey. It is the crown of it. Every lesson learned, every discipline mastered, every mindset rewired ultimately leads here, to the understanding that life's greatest privilege is not to have, but to give. In giving, you align with the rhythm of abundance, the heartbeat of creation, and the very essence of what it means to be human. Chapter 12. Habit 11. Faith and Vision Alignment. There comes a point in every journey of transformation where human effort alone is no longer enough. You can discipline your mind, master your emotions, and cultivate clarity. Yet there will still be moments when the path ahead is obscured, when your strength wanes, and logic can no longer explain the way forward. It is in those moments that faith becomes essential, not as a substitute for effort, but as the invisible force that bridges human limitation with divine possibility. True mindset mastery is not merely mental, it is spiritual. It is the alignment of thought, emotion, and action with a vision that transcends the self. Faith and vision alignment is the highest stage of inner transformation. It is when your personal desires are refined by divine purpose. It is when your goals are no longer fueled by ego or fear, but by clarity and conviction that what you are building has meaning beyond you. When your mindset aligns with faith, your inner world becomes a channel for divine wisdom, and your actions flow from guidance rather than anxiety. You stop striving to control outcomes and begin trusting in a higher order that works through you, not against you. Faith does not deny reason. It expands it. It sees beyond what is visible to the eyes and trusts what is whispered to the soul. It is the language through which the universe speaks to the heart, reminding you that even when you cannot see the whole picture, you are still part of one. Vision is the blueprint of that picture. Faith is the energy that brings it to life. Without vision, faith lacks direction. Without faith, vision lacks power. When the two unite, They create unstoppable momentum, an alignment between divine intention and human participation. Aligning your thoughts, emotions, and purpose with divine vision begins with awareness. Every thought you entertain is a vibration. Thoughts aligned with fear, doubt, and scarcity cloud your inner perception, making it difficult to hear divine guidance. Thoughts aligned with gratitude, love, and purpose, however, sharpen your spiritual hearing. When your thoughts and emotions are in harmony with faith, they act as tuning forks, resonating with higher truth. You begin to sense the flow of divine timing, and coincidences start to look like confirmations. To align with divine vision, you must first clarify what that vision truly is. Divine vision is not simply what you want from life. It is what life wants to express through you. It's not driven by competition or comparison, but by calling. It's the deep knowing that your existence has a unique purpose, a contribution that no one else can replicate. This vision often begins as a quiet stirring, a persistent idea, a sense of direction that won't let go of you. When you pay attention to it and act in faith, the vision unfolds one step at a time. Faith alignment requires surrender, not as an act of weakness, but as an act of trust. The ego seeks control, but the spirit seeks flow. The ego says, I must make this happen. Faith says, I am guided, and I will do my part while trusting the rest. Letting go of control is not abandoning responsibility. It is releasing anxiety about results. It's understanding that you control the planting, not the harvest. You do the work, but you leave the outcome in higher hands. This faith-based confidence allows you to move boldly even when circumstances seem uncertain. When you operate from faith, fear loses its authority. Fear thrives on the illusion of separation, the belief that you are alone, unsupported, and vulnerable. Faith dissolves that illusion. It reminds you that there is a larger intelligence orchestrating your path. You begin to see setbacks not as punishments, but as redirections. Delays no longer breed frustration because you understand that divine timing is always precise. What seems like waiting is often preparation. What seems like loss is often positioning. Belief, when cultivated through faith, has the power to rewire reality. Science has long shown that belief influences biology, behavior, and perception. Placebo studies demonstrate that when the mind believes in healing, the body responds as if healing has already begun. Likewise, when you believe deeply in a vision, your entire being, conscious and subconscious, begins to act in alignment with it. Faith activates the creative laws of the mind and the universe. It shifts your energy from lack to expectation, from doubt to conviction. The more you believe, the more your environment rearranges itself to match your belief. This principle operates both spiritually and psychologically. Spiritually, faith moves you into resonance with divine flow, aligning your energy with what is meant for you. Psychologically, belief shapes perception. When you believe something is possible, your brain filters information differently, noticing opportunities, people, and patterns that support that possibility. This is not wishful thinking. It is mental and spiritual alignment in motion. What you hold in unwavering faith becomes magnetized to you. Faith-driven focus is the daily practice of aligning your inner world with divine vision through intentional thought, emotion, and attention. It's waking up each morning and centering yourself in trust before taking action. It's quieting the noise of doubt long enough to hear the whisper of guidance. It's choosing to see challenges as refinement rather than rejection. Faith-driven focus is discipline in disguise. The discipline to hold your attention on what is right and true even when the visible world tempts you to fear. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate faith alignment is through meditation and prayer. Meditation quiets the mind so that you can hear divine direction. Prayer focuses intention so that your heart aligns with it. Together, they create a dialogue between the finite and the infinite. In moments of silence, you begin to feel guided rather than lost. The more you practice this, the more naturally your thoughts and emotions fall into harmony with purpose. You stop pushing and you start flowing. Another practice of faith alignment is gratitude in advance, giving thanks for what you believe is already unfolding. Gratitude signals faith. When you thank life for blessings not yet visible, you affirm your trust in divine timing. You move from wishing to knowing, from hoping to expecting. This simple but profound shift rewires your emotional state from one of waiting to one of receiving. Gratitude transforms longing into readiness. Faith-based living does not mean blind optimism. It is not pretending that pain doesn't exist or ignoring difficulty. It is acknowledging the challenge, but refusing to let it define you. Faith teaches you to see beyond temporary appearances, to look through the fog of uncertainty and trust that the sun still exists behind the clouds. The faith-aligned mind is steady even in the storm because it knows the storm is never permanent. Surrender is the final act of alignment. It is releasing your need to control how the vision unfolds while staying committed to walking your part of the path. It is saying, I will do my best, and I trust that life will handle the rest. Surrender is not resignation. It is cooperation. It is recognizing that divine intelligence often works in ways that defy human understanding. Sometimes, the doors that close are the very ones protecting you from detours. Sometimes, the pauses in your journey are pauses for preparation. Surrender keeps you in peace, even when the plan changes. Faith and vision alignment also strengthens your resilience. When you operate from faith, you no longer crumble under uncertainty because your stability doesn't come from external security. It comes from inner assurance. You understand that your source of strength is not circumstance, but connection. This connection anchors you so deeply that you can move through life seasons, the gains, the losses, the waiting, with a calm heart and a steady mind. Spiritually, this alignment invites you into partnership with the divine. You stop living as though you are the only architect of your destiny and begin to live as a co-creator with a higher intelligence. You bring your intentions, your effort, your discipline, and your faith, and the divine brings synchronicity, opportunity, and timing. Together, you build a life that is not only successful but sacred. Faith alignment also refines your motives. When your vision aligns with divine purpose, your goals evolve from self-serving to soul-serving. You begin to ask not just what do I want, but what am I here to give? This shift expands your consciousness from scarcity to service. You realize that divine vision is not about personal gain, but about contribution. Faith reminds you that your success is not only meant to elevate you, but to elevate others through you. Over time, this alignment transforms not just your mindset, but your entire identity. You begin to live from a higher frequency, one of trust, purpose, and peace. Fear no longer drives you. Love does. Uncertainty no longer paralyzes you. It excites you. You begin to see life as a divine dialogue. Every event, encounter, and challenge carrying a message meant for your evolution. Faith becomes not something you practice occasionally, but a way of being, a lens through which you interpret reality. The daily practice of faith and vision alignment is simple but profound. It begins with stillness, where you reconnect with your source. It continues through mindfulness, where you align your thoughts with truth. It matures through action, where you act from conviction, not convenience. And it culminates in surrender, where you trust that what is meant for you will always find you. When you live this way, even the unknown becomes sacred ground. Faith and vision alignment is the art of walking with unseen certainty. It is the harmony between doing and trusting, between creating and allowing. It's knowing that you are guided, even when the map is not visible. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions align with divine vision, your life becomes a living testimony of grace, a fusion of human effort and divine orchestration. Faith does not remove obstacles. It redefines them. It turns every challenge into a stepping stone, every detour into direction, and every delay into divine timing. It allows you to rest even while you work, to believe even before you see, and to give thanks even before the harvest. Faith is the quiet knowing that everything is unfolding exactly as it should, not in your timing, but in perfect timing. This is the final stage of mindset mastery, not control, but connection, not striving, but surrender, not mere success, but spiritual alignment. When faith and vision unite, Your life transcends effort and enters flow. You stop chasing purpose and begin living it. You become a vessel through which the divine expresses itself effortlessly, through your thoughts, your actions, and your very being. And in that sacred alignment, you discover the truth that underlies all transformation, that you were never walking alone, and that the power that shaped the stars is the same power guiding your path.